We will now proceed with the second speaker, that is Mr. Jonathan Granoff, awarded international lawyer and advocate for peace, president of the Global Security Institute, fellow and trustee of the World Academy of Art and Science, representative to UN for World Summits of Nobel Peace Laureates, founding member Voices for Nuclear Free World of United Religions Initiative and Peace Pledge Project. Mr. Granoff was an expert before the US Congress, parliaments of the UK, Canada, and the UN. The title of the presentation is Interfaith, Intrafaith, and Innerfaith Ethics. Mr. Granoff, I hope that you're here with us.
Yeah, I am. I thought we were going to play that the video I sent you.
Yes, we will now play the video, and then please proceed.
And I can speak. Yeah.
Yes.
Each month, I have the great privilege of hosting a small group of diplomats, scientists, lawyers, religious leaders, and all of them are deeply involved in international nuclear weapons negotiations. I'd like you to meet these people, and then I'd like you to hear the prayer that we say whenever we get together.
I am Bill Perry. I'm a professor emeritus in the engineering school at Stanford University. I was the 19th Secretary of Defense of the United States, and before that, the Director of Defense Research and Engineering. My experiences through the years with nuclear weapons have made an indelible impression on me and convinced me that these immensely powerful weapons threaten no less than our own civilization. This has led me to make the primary task of my life working to ensure that they will never, ever be used again.
My name is Sidney Drell. I am a scientist, a physicist. Beyond my academic teaching and research career, I have spent many years as an advisor to the United States government on technical national security issues and nuclear weapons in particular. I recognize their almost unimaginable destructive potential and their capacity for destroying the human race. This is a capacity far beyond what we were created to acquire, and therefore I believe and work to get rid of these weapons as soon as practical before they destroy humanity.
My name is George Shultz, former Secretary of State under President Ronald Reagan, and this is my own prayer. Dear God, please bring common sense and divine guidance to our work on the problems that nuclear weapons pose to our world. Man has invented a means to destroy us all. We must eliminate these weapons in order to preserve a sane and peaceful world. We pray for your help as we work toward this goal.
I am Ambassador James Goodby, and the bombings at Hiroshima and Nagasaki have shaped my soul and my professional life, from my participation in the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty to my present efforts at seeking to dismantle, jointly with the Russians, the nuclear weapons legacy of the Cold War. President Kennedy said, "Here on Earth, God's work must truly be our own." I think that God's work is to rid the world of the present nuclear threat.
I am Monica Willard. The issue of eliminating nuclear weapons has shaped my life as a peace activist and as the representative of the United Religions Initiative to the United Nations. Knowing that nuclear weapons can be used by choice or accident, and that they have the capacity to destroy our planet and everything we love, calls me to action. A world without nuclear weapons is protection. For the love of our children, grandchildren, and future generations, for the beauty of the natural world, for a safer future, I offer this prayer.
I'm Jonathan Granoff. As a young man interning for a congressman, I met then Senator Robert Kennedy. He told us how close we came to destroying civilization during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He told us that eliminating nuclear weapons before they eliminate us is the practical and moral litmus test of our time. For many decades since, I've worked as an activist, an international lawyer, and a human being to rid the world of this threat. We need each other to do this, and we need God's grace.
I am Ambassador Thomas Graham, first with the Soviet Union, and later with countries all over the world. I have participated in arms limitation policy development and negotiations on behalf of the United States of America. Always, the overarching objective has been to control and eventually eliminate all nuclear weapons. And although much has been achieved in the past 70 years, the sword of mass destruction still hangs precariously over our heads. As long as there is breath in my lungs and urgency in my heart, I intend to do all in my power to banish these ungodly weapons from the face of the earth.
The beginning and the end are in your hands, O Creator of the universe.
And in our hands you have placed the fate of this planet.
We who are tested by having both creative and destructive power in our free will
turn to you in sober fear and in intoxicating hope.
We ask for your guidance, and we wish to share in your imagination as we deliberate about nuclear force.
Help us to lift the fog of atomic darkness
that hovers so pervasively over our earth, your earth,
so that soon all eyes may see life magnified by your pure light.
Bless all of us who wait today for your presence
and who dedicate ourselves to achieve your intended peace
and rightful equilibrium on earth.
In the name of all that is holy and all that is hoped. Amen.
Amen.
Today, the doomsday clock stands at 3 minutes till midnight, the highest level ever recorded. Instead of global alarm and efforts at reduction, the opposite is happening. Nuclear nations are quietly gearing up to modernize and create new and more powerful nuclear weapons. Rogue nations are neglecting their citizens in favor of advancing their nuclear status. Rogue terrorist groups are frantically trying to obtain nuclear materials and weapons. Nuclear weapons are built to be used sooner or later. But rather than stepping back from the brink, the world is dashing to plunge over the cliff. In this moment of nuclear madness, what can we do? The nuclear experts whom I know pray. They live into the direction that their prayers take them. They become advocates, and they join with others to build a global voice of nuclear abolition. We invite you to do the same. Our little group is called Voices for a World Free of Nuclear Weapons, and we are part of the United Religions Initiative. If we can help you find your voice, feel free to reach out to us at uri.org. In case you think that your moral, spiritual voice is in the minority, please know every major religious group in the world has called for the abolition of nuclear weapons. Follow the prayer that is in your soul. Raise your voice. Save the world.
We can't create anything more perfect than we are. And yet we're creating technologies without the constraints of law and morality, We're letting the first horse out of the barn that we created that could end humanity, the nuclear venture. Its problem was highlighted by one of the founders of both the World Academy of Art and Science and Pugwash and the Global Security Institute, where I serve as president, Dr. Joseph Rotblat. And Dr. Rotblat demonstrated in his own being the integration of true spirituality, true faithfulness and ethics, and walked off the Manhattan Project when he saw that the basis of it, which was as a deterrent against the possible Nazi obtaining of the nuclear bomb or the atomic bomb. And he went to the leaders of the Manhattan Project, Mr. Groves, and said, if you do this, this will spread and it will put all humanity at risk. And there's no reason to do it now. And there was no good reason. The horse was out of the barn when the money was allocated. Don't tell me about your values. Show me your budget. And that was part of what drove the project. The money was spent and they had to deliver. And Joseph Rotblat saw the flaw in that and he walked off. He challenged the entire venture. And for that courage and what came from that, the Pugwash conferences ultimately emerged and won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1995. It all began with one person's heart and conscience saying this is not acceptable. And if there's anything that religions can do of great value, it is to awaken the conscience of people. I was deeply moved at the peace conference at the Millennium when in the General Assembly, hundreds of religious leaders gathered to affirm our underlying unifying values. I only remember one phrase that came from that whole conference, and it was really inspiring. And thank God for Ted Turner, a secular person who funded it. The most powerful presentation, in my opinion, was an Inuit Eskimo elder who came and said, we have an oral history of tens of thousands of years where I come from. And we're seeing lakes which shouldn't be there. We're seeing the melting of the polar ice cap. We're seeing rivers of fresh water in massive amounts pouring into the oceans and changing the pH of the oceans. We're seeing the very climate of the planet being changed. Oh, my brothers and sisters from the South, you've developed science and technology that's melting the polar ice cap. When will you develop a technology to melt the human heart? And that is all I remember. And that, for me, is a guidepost. And that particular Eskimo elder, a few years ago, hosted a delegation arising from the United Religions Initiative, one of the multiple interfaith initiatives that is all over the planet. Parliament of the World Religions, United Religions Initiative, Temple of Understanding. And he hosted a delegation that arose from an initiative called the Peace Pledge Project, which is an interfaith initiative that took pilgrimages to holy places. And I had the privilege of going to see the melting of the polar ice cap. And we went from the polar ice cap to Assisi to highlight his call to learn the technology of melting the heart, which obviously St. Francis embodied. And there we issued the following statement. The journey of life is a pilgrimage. Beautiful qualities are a compass. Intending to advance peace and harmony in our personal lives and in the world, we affirm the following. We commit to treat all lives with loving kindness and compassion. We reject the distortions of religious, national, and racial prejudice, which are used to violate the golden rule to treat others as we wish to be treated. We respect the diversity of ways people pursue their individual ideals. We challenge the misuse of beliefs, rites, rituals, practices, philosophies, and traditions used to degrade anyone or which lead to violence. We affirm the necessity of bringing loving kindness and compassion into action. Through such actions, we seek to improve the relationships of people, one nation to another, one religion to another, one belief system to another, one gender to another, one race to another, and one person to another. We call upon all people of goodwill to join this pledge. We pledge that in all we intend, think, and do, we shall strive to bring loving kindness and compassion into action and into the lives of all we meet. So in the same way as Pugwash has adopted the Hippocratic Oath that scientists should do no harm, this was a call to the religious leaders and people of the different faith traditions to pledge to put the qualities of kindness and love and compassion above any differences that can lead to violence and degrading anyone. In other words, the golden rule. Because the golden rule rests on those qualities. The golden rule rests on compassion, on feeling for others as one feels for oneself. I was recently at a conference at Princeton, convened by the James Madison Program for American Ideals and Institutions at Princeton, the largest Muslim organization in the world, Indonesia's Nahdlatul Ulama, the Center for Shared Civilizational Values, and the Global Humanitarian Islam Movement called the R20. And it had a lot of leaders from all of the different faith traditions, and they adopted, as part of their call to action, something that I think we should all promote, which was, it was a long statement of all the values that we're hearing today. Therefore, we urge the United Nations General Assembly to recommend that all UN member states distribute an electronic and/or hard copy of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in their national languages to all school children through their respective ministries of education. Now, that's a tangible thing that all religions, I think, should be promoting, and I hope the Holy Nuncio will adopt this. I will definitely bring this to him, because the Universal Declaration of Human Rights rests on the inherent dignity of everyone. It doesn't say where that comes from, but we know it comes from the great mystery that all religions point to. And it embodies the principle that religious liberty is a fundamental human right. That religious liberty and the liberty of conscience and the rights of assembly, the rights of speech, these rights don't come from the state. These rights come from our inherent humanity, which comes from the Creator. And religions have a duty to highlight that and to advance it. The interesting thing is that we assert the golden rule, but religions are not asserting that our major institutions should abide by it, nor are religions asserting that they themselves must abide by it. I would say out of this gathering, we should call for religions to treat other religions as they want to be treated, and nations should treat other nations as they want to be treated. Because in the same way as there are principles in the world of physics, in the physical world, that can be applied to technology, the human venture has a spiritual dimension that also has rules. And stability is obtained by adherence to those rules. And part of being human is having ethics and morals and values. That's part of what makes us human. When we violate those rules, instability arises. And the golden rule, in its implicit integrating insight, articulates one of those principles. And nothing so offends it as the nuclear weapons venture, in which 9 states say these weapons are good for us, but not good for anyone else. Now, just so you grasp how absurd this is, imagine if the Biological Weapons Convention said, no nation can use smallpox or polio as a weapon, but will reserve the right for 9 countries to be able to use the plague as a weapon, and no one else can do it. It just is so patently destabilizing because it violates the principle of equity and the principle of human unity inherent in the Golden Rule. So in the same way as there are laws of physics, there's laws of morality. And we shouldn't allow technologies to be applied without the laws of morality and law controlling them in advance. We let the horse out of the barn with nuclear weapons. We have to find a way of constraining artificial intelligence in that same regard. Fast. And religions have a lot to say about that, because artificial intelligence arises from word processing, which arises from information in the material world. But values come from the luminosity of the soul. They come from inside our core humanity, not from the information of the world. It's like the love that every infant and purity that every infant comes into this world with. That purity that responds immediately to the mother's love, that welcomes it. That doesn't come from the world. It doesn't come from information. It comes from our core humanity. It comes from life itself. And that's why the admonition to see the core of life as love and compassion is the treasure of the world's religions. And that treasure, think of it in worldly terms as a capital resource, has to be expended to save the world. But it's not. It's not. In my country, the capital of religion and in terms of political engagement has been used to elect officials over one issue, the sanctity of life, as applied to the right of abortion. Political capital is used for that, and many politicians are elected on that. But political capital is not being used by the religions to protect the sanctity of the web of life. When it was used by some members of the Catholic faith to push the Chemical Weapons Convention and brought before some of the senators who were holding it up, they changed their votes. That political capital was exercised, and it changed votes. I urge that political capital to protect the living web of life threatened by climate change be exercised. And certainly, when we see the leadership of all the Nobel Peace Laureates, the leaders of the major religions, the Dalai Lama, Pope Francis, and the history of nuclear disarmament advocated by the Holy See, there is tremendous, tremendous energy that could be released to highlight the ethical imperative to get rid of nuclear weapons and the ethical imperative to address protecting the web of life and climate change. And that's very important. And that will not happen without the kind of thing that Pugwash has historically done with scientists, and that the representative, the Holy Nuncio, who just spoke so eloquently of the value of interfaith dialogue. But that interfaith dialogue has to come back to actions. We have to focus on bringing these actions into effect. So one of the ways in which I think we could all work together is the United Religions Initiative. And you'll see when I finish a prayer that we do and the kind of people that are engaged in it. We have started an initiative to make August 6th an International Prayer Day. That on that day, there should be religious gatherings and calls for individuals and our political institutions to take a moment of prayer that nuclear bombs never be used, remembering the use of one relatively small device dropped in Hiroshima on that day, that date in 1945. So, and I hope you can post in the chat the links that I gave you the other night of how people can get in touch with the United Religions Initiative. The United Religions Initiative is the largest grassroots interfaith organization. And this is a call to empower individuals to pray, because we go in the direction of our prayers. Prayers set the compass of our heart correctly. And the prayer is, what's grounded in the prayer is the remembrance of the suffering that the bomb caused, and that we're all, in a sense, beneath it. I think about how president of my country told the American people that when we invaded Iraq, that the people of Baghdad would come out with flowers in celebration. No, that didn't happen. And I think of how when the leader of Russia said that the people of Kiev would welcome the Russian invaders with flowers and celebration. And my wife said, no, that's not going to happen. And I think that any cab driver in Baghdad or cab driver in Kiev could have told the heads of Russia or my country, the United States, no, that's not going to happen. When you invade countries, people don't like it. You wouldn't like it if your country was invaded. And I think that two individuals right now, the heads of Russia and the United States, with over 90% of the world's nuclear weapons, could end humanity without any oversight from anybody. And the heads of our countries could have less intelligence on geopolitics than any cab driver in Baghdad or Kiev. That they are frail, relatively ignorant human beings like the rest of us. And they have the responsibility and power of the very fabric of life itself on the planet. There's something out of balance. There's something dramatically out of balance. As George Kennan said, it's a blasphemy, an affront to God of the highest order to be threatening the very future of humanity with these weapons. And I think Pugwash and the World Academy and all the organizations that we represent, and certainly all the religions, have to make a clarion call on this as an issue, because remember, nuclear weapons are a 1930s physics and a 1940s technology. And trust me, DARPA and their counterparts, the cutting edge of military technologies, didn't go into retirement in 1945. There's all kinds of horrible weapons sitting on shelves that will allow fewer people with less resources to do devastating damage and cause enormous suffering. So we need to utilize the power of moral persuasion and the power of prayer to constrain the power of science and technology. That's what's before us today. And human security, as my colleague Gary Jacobs so eloquently stated, is an integrating principle capable of addressing the multiple challenges that we face because we have not brought modernity into compliance with our basic moral and ethical insights of the wise since time immemorial. And human security brings us back to what the brilliant statement of the founders of Pugwash and the World Academy said: remember your humanity, forget the rest. And that rests on what is our humanity? It is compassion. It is love for one another. For without that, our time is wasted. And with that, our time will flourish. So that, to me, is the role of religion. That is the secret sauce that's missing in our meal. That is our duty, and that is within our gift, because that is a duty that arises from the depths of our heart and the prayers that we all have for one another. That should guide us.
Okay, once again, Mr. Granoff, thank you very much for sharing your wisdom and extensive experience with us, and expressing the importance of the golden rule and of empathy, love, compassion, and that we should treat the others like we would like to be treated ourselves. And those, I think, and the importance of prayer. I think that is why we think this video is also important, that we will share with everyone the power of prayer, and also this World Prayer Day. I think that is a great initiative, and all peace initiatives that you, Mr. Granoff, initiated and your organizations. So we really would like to have a great support for these initiatives. We will share in the chat and also in our newsletter. And once again, thank you for being with us.
I had planned, I centered my whole presentation around the video. So let me just, give me 30 seconds or so. The video, the people engaged in the prayer were the former head of the Los Alamos Laboratory, built the nuclear arsenal of the United States, the former Secretary of Defense of the United States, the former Secretary of State of the United States, and the diplomat who negotiated the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the START Treaty, the Chemical Weapons Convention, and the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. In other words, when we opened up a tent that said, what is your aspiration, you guys who built this architecture of arms control and the weapons themselves, what do you want to say from your heart? They joined in. They joined in because that's what they want to achieve, but their method of doing it doesn't have the political will of the people, because the people don't know. And the pulpits, the imams, the rabbis, the swamis, the priests, the ministers have such an important role, and scientists. There were scientists in this prayer, leading scientists. But the moral challenge has to be put before them, so that they have to make a choice, so that it's not an issue of mere sentiment, but it's a clear furqan, as they might say in Islam, a clear choice, a clear distinction. This is good, this is bad. And silence is complicity. And right now we're on the verge of an existential arms race that could lead us over the cliff. And now is a time in which we must demand that this choice be made, that we get back on the course of non-proliferation and disarmament, get back on the course of protecting the climate, and we cannot be silent. And the religious leaders cannot be silent. And Pugwash and the World Academy and every one of us have to put this challenge on the table. And that's what the prayer is about.